755 matches, 516 goals and 224 assists. These numbers define Real Madrid's BBC. Benzema, Bale and Cristiano Ronaldo. This trio didn't just win matches, but they destroyed the footballing world. In 5 years, they managed to win 12 trophies, 3 consecutive Champions League titles, and were considered one of the greatest trios in football history. But how good were they really? To find out, let's go back to the beginning. The Galacticos, a Real Madrid team so good some players still sweat when they hear their names. Beckham, Zidane, Figo, Ronaldo. These players did more than just dominate. They made football look like art. Real were a force of nature in the very early 2000s, and very few could even dream of going toe-to-toe with them. But all eras must end, a lesson every fan learns eventually. By 2003, Real's dominance was under threat from Barcelona's rising stars. Believe it or not, there was a time when Real Madrid wasn't at the very peak of Spanish football. In fact, by 2006, the club had failed to win not just a league title, but any trophy at all in 3 years. Real Madrid doesn't accept failure. Something needed to change to bring the club back to its glory years. First, Real hired Fabio Capello and tasked him with winning La Liga. While the team just about won the league on the last day of the season, Capello's hyper-defensive, no-nonsense football left a lot to be desired. Fans wanted the free-flowing, beautiful game they'd seen under the Galacticos era. Capello was more Simeone than Wenger. Next up was Bernd Schuster, appointed in 2007. Schuster met a similar fate to Capello. He brought back the glorious attacking football fans had been craving, which led to domination in La Liga. This time, Real won the title with 3 games still to play. But just winning the league isn't enough for a club like Real. The true test is the Champions League. After Schuster's side got knocked out by Roma in the round of 16, everyone knew the coach's days were numbered. Finally, in 2008, Real hired Juan de Ramos, by far the worst of the appointments. Real under Ramos suffered massively. They crashed out 4-0 to Liverpool in the first knockout round, finished second in La Liga, and suffered a humiliating 6-2 defeat at home to Barcelona. Every club goes through difficult times. Every club except for Real Madrid. These results were absolutely unacceptable. Something had to change. It was then that the club came together and worked on a plan to usher in a new age of football, the second coming of the Galacticos. Florentino Perez, the club president at the time of the Galacticos, stepped back into the role after Ramon Calderon quit. The man who had bought the first years of the Galacticos would now bring on the second. Perez isn't a man who does anything by halves. When he came into the presidency for the second time, he aimed to make a splash, and boy did he. His first signing was none other than Cristiano Ronaldo, the 2008 Ballon d'Or winner and pride of Man United, for an earth-shattering, record-breaking fee of £80 million. That's equivalent to £124 million today. The signing sent shockwaves around the footballing world. Ronaldo had helped United win 3 titles on the trot and had pushed the team to 2 Champions League finals. United were devastated to see him go, but Real fans were over the moon. Little did anyone know, that was just the start. Next up was Karim Benzema from Lyon. Lyon had just won their 7th consecutive league title and had cemented themselves as a force to be feared on the European stage too. Their academy produced many talented players, with Benzema as their star prodigy. With these 2 stars added to the squad, the world had high hopes for what Real Madrid could achieve in the coming season. The results were a mixed bag, some glory mixed in with a lot of disappointment. Anyone who knows anything about football knows just how incredible CR7's start was for Real, a sign of the dominance that was yet to come. Ronaldo scored in his first 4 league games, the first player in Real's history to do so. On top of that, he netted a brace in both of his first 2 Champions League games for the club. By the end of the season, Ronaldo had scored 33 goals and earned 10 assists in just 35 matches. Unreal stats for an unreal player. Benzema, on the other hand, was struggling. His lack of goals and poor performances saw him pushed to the bench in favour of Gonzalo Higuain. The Spanish media started laying it on thick, calling him the new Anelka of Real. Completely overshadowed by Ronaldo and feeling the crushing weight of expectation on his shoulders, Benzema's confidence dipped massively. He managed only 9 goals and 6 assists in 33 games. Things got worse, however. When Real went up against AD Alcorcon, a team in the second division of the Copa del Rey, everyone wrote it off as a guaranteed win for Real. Why even bother watching the match at all, many fans thought. They woke up the next morning, turned on the TV, and saw the 4-0 result pop up on the screen. Just as I thought they thought, until they noticed who it was 4-0 to, and their jaws fell to the floor. A humiliating defeat for sure, but at least it was just the domestic cup. Real could live without it. But when it rains, it pours. Benzema faced his former club of Lyon in the round of 16 of the Champions League. In another shock result, Lyon defeated the Spanish giants 2-1 on aggregate, denying them European glory. Alarm bells started to go off. Halfway through the season, Real were 5 points behind the leaders Barcelona. With La Liga as their only hope of a trophy, the club put in a Herculean effort to close the gap, winning 12 games on the trot, but lost to Barcelona 2-0 at home and drew away to Malaga on the last day, handing the title to their arch rivals. At the start of the season, pundits and fans alike believed Real were destined for great things. By its end, they had nothing to show for their monster signings. People began to wonder if the second Galacticos era had ended before it had even truly begun. Would Real run itself into the ground chasing glory days that had long ago passed, or was there still hope? These were the main questions being asked at the time. Papa Perez, on the other hand, didn't panic. He knew players destined for glory when he saw them. Ronaldo and Benzema were exactly that. All the ship needed was the right man at the helm to lead them to the promised land. They need a man who had proven himself a serial winner, a leader with unquestionable authority and discipline. They needed the special one.
I think I'm a special one.
In 2010, Jose Mourinho got the ball rolling for Real's second era of Galacticos dominance. The man had led Porto to a huge Champions League win and won Chelsea their first few Premier League titles, but most importantly, he had won the treble for Inter Milan at Barcelona's expense in the Champions League. The final was held at the Bernabeu that season, so Mourinho saved Real from seeing Barca lift the Champions League trophy in their ground. Real fans loved him already. The club continued their big spending spree by bringing in Mesut Ozil and Angel Di Maria. Ronaldo was given his iconic number 7 and Benzema earned his number 9 shirt. Mourinho didn't win La Liga or the Champions League in his first season at the club, but he would accomplish 2 key things that would set the foundations for future glory. First, Mourinho dented Barcelona's invincible legacy with a Copa del Rey final win over their arch-rivals. While they lost to them in the league and the Champions League, losing to the Barcelona side was no shame at all. The trophy win and performance proved that Real were ready to challenge the almighty Barcelona once again. Second, most important of all, Mourinho helped Benzema find his form. He scored 26 goals and got 9 assists across the season, dwarfed by Ronaldo's ungodly 53 goal tally to be sure, but still a fantastic performance for the young man, who had been lacking so much confidence up until then. In his second year, 2011, Mourinho led Real to their 32nd league title after 4 years without glory. He defeated Barcelona 2-1 in that year, the first El Clasico league win since 2008, and earned a record-breaking 100 points, the most ever accumulated by any team in Europe's entire history. While they had done well to progress in the Champions League, Real were still a way off winning it. Mourinho's following season ended terribly, and the club decided to part ways with the special one in June 2013, thanking him for everything he'd done for the club. His replacement? None other than the eyebrow-raising, cigar-smoking Don himself, Carlo Ancelotti. The Don looked at Ronaldo and Benzema. He saw incredible talent and skill, but knew they needed one more world-class player to bring in a new era of dominance. Ancelotti looked for the final piece of the puzzle and found it in all places at Tottenham Hotspur. When Gareth Bale joined Southampton in 2007 at the age of 16, everyone and their cat could tell that he wouldn't be staying there long. His pace, skill on the ball, and incredible athleticism made him a super adaptable player. When he moved to Tottenham Hotspur in 2008, his talent shone through. Despite some injury issues, Bale tore it up in the Premier League, taking Spurs to new heights. Ancelotti kept his eye on the Welshman, and when 2013 rolled around, Real Madrid made Tottenham an offer they couldn't refuse. When Real came knocking, not even the hottest talent can turn them down. Bale had his eyes on winning major honours, so naturally he left Tottenham and joined the Spanish side, ready to bring Real back to its glory days. Considering just how influential the BBC trio came to be, it might shock you to hear that Bale was not the club's first choice. Back in 2011, Real had tried to sign Neymar from Santos, but their €45 million bid was rejected. He later joined Barcelona to form the almighty MSN trio instead. It makes you wonder what would have been had the star gone to Madrid instead. Still, Bale was hardly much of a downgrade. His legendary performance against Inter Milan, where he put away a hat-trick of splendid goals, cemented his status as a top-class talent. Alongside Benzema and Ronaldo, the world believed he could easily transform into a world-class player, the man Real needed to make the La Decima dream a reality. Birds fly, grass grows. Real Madrid win the Champions League. It's just a fact of life. But if you've been paying attention, you'll realise that during this time, Real had not won a single Champions League title in over 10 years. For their fans, this was a disaster. But all clubs go through rough patches, Real included. Why did this one trophy in particular matter so much? The club had racked up a record 9 Champions League trophies up until this point, and the idea of being the very first club to push into the double digits was a dream come true. After suffering through a period of peak Barcelona dominance, Real fans needed something to lord over their arch rivals. What would it take for Real to make history with the La Decima? Many believed the BBC trio could be the answer to that question. Sadly, Bale's start didn't exactly inspire much confidence. Injury kept him out for long periods, missing 5 games and only playing 5 full games in the first 16 of the season. The trio didn't have much synergy when playing together at first, and it took a while to get to know each other. Still, Bale's quality shone through, and the player still managed to rack up 9 goals and 7 assists, despite the difficult start. By the halfway mark, Real were 3 points behind Barcelona and Atletico, their local rivals, who had managed to make themselves competitive in the last few years. Their head-to-head record that season was poor too. Real lost 1-0 at home and drew 2-2 away in the Real derbies. They also lost 2-1 at Camp Nou and suffered a brutal 3-4 defeat thanks to an unbelievable Messi hat-trick at Bernabeu. But in football, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. With a good dozen games under their belt, the Bale, Ronaldo, Benzema trio really started to flourish. Rival fans looked on in terror as BBC started scoring goals for fun, smashing defences and tearing up the league in the second half of the season. Games were ended in 5-0 and 6-0 scorelines left, right and centre. By the end of the La Liga season, the BBC had scored a total of 97 goals, which was 61% of the total amount of goals. This form wasn't enough to make up the difference from the rough start to the league season, however, and the club finished 3rd, while Atletico earned their first league title in 18 years. Real fans saw the incredible potential in their front 3, but their local rivals' success left a bitter taste in their mouth. A 2-1 win over Barcelona in the final, thanks to a monstrous run by Bale, helped them feel slightly better, but they still weren't happy. But while Real's league finish wasn't up to snuff, the form the BBC trio had found translated marvellously to the Champions League, the real apple of their eye. 3 German clubs stood before them on the road to the final. First up was Schalke away. This ended in a slaughter. Real won 6-1 thanks to an outrageously dominant performance from the BBC trio, each scoring a brace with silky smooth passing. The home game ended 3-1, leaving Schalke completely obliterated in a 9-2 victory on aggregate for Real. Next was Borussia Dortmund. Given Dortmund's European heritage, this would prove a much tougher challenge. In the first leg, Real dominated their German opponents with a clean 3-0 win at the Bernabeu. Fans rolled their eyes and figured it was game over at this point. Who would come back against such a side? But that's when Dortmund proved that the Champions League is never easy. The overpowering atmosphere of the yellow wall almost proved too much as Dortmund went 2-0 up in the second fixture. Real managed to squeak through at the end with a 3-2 win on aggregate, but the lesson had been learned. Not even BBC could underestimate their foes in this competition. Last was the biggest fixture of them all, Bayern Munich, the champions of Europe. Millions of fans tuned in to watch the game of the year, the one that might just determine who would lift the European Cup at the end. Bayern had dispatched Arsenal and Manchester United with ease up until this point, and Real's shaky win against Dortmund made many fans nervous for the fixture. Some hope shone through in the first leg. The opening game of the tie at the Bernabeu ended with a 1-0 win thanks to a beautifully worked Benzema goal. No away goals conceded was a big bonus, but a 1-0 lead against a team as efficient and battle-hardened as Bayern did not guarantee victory. Many fans started to worry as Real headed to the Allianz Arena. Could they hold on and take one step closer to La Decima? They needn't have worried. Real put their heads down, focused on the task at hand, and pulled out a performance that shocked the world. Not only did they keep a clean sheet, they managed to put 4 past Neuer, 2 coming from Sergio Ramos and the other 2 from Ronaldo to seal the deal. Real Madrid were in the Champions League final. Let's take a look at the incredible stats up until this point for the BBC trio. Of the 17 goals scored in the knockout phase campaign, 13 had been earned by Ronaldo, Bale and Benzema. There was no doubt in anyone's minds that they were by far the best attacking trio on the planet at the time. But history doesn't remember stats, it remembers trophies. There was one final hurdle the team needed to clear before they could begin the long-awaited era of glory. After defeating Milan, Barcelona and Chelsea in previous rounds, Atletico Madrid stood poised to bring eternal victory to their often overshadowed club. Winning the league title had already energised the fan base, but a win over their local rivals to earn the first Champions League title in the same year and to deny Real La Decima's dream sent it into a frenzy. 2 clubs, 1 city. One team looking to bring back the glory days and the other hoping to kickstart them. On the 24th of May 2014 in Lisbon, the battle for Madrid began. It was up to BBC to make the difference for Real. The first half ended with Atletico in the lead thanks to a scrappy Messi goal by Godin in the 36th minute. Real fans held their breath as the second half started. Could their legendary trio find a goal in time to level the score, or was it Atletico's time to shine? The minutes dragged on, but Real couldn't find an opening. Atletico's players defended like their lives were on the line. BBC threw everything they possibly could at their rivals, but somehow they held on. The last few seconds of injury time ticked away. The scoreboard still showed 1-0. Atletico fans held their breaths. Real fans hung their heads in defeat. La Decima's dream looked all but over. Their prized trio had fallen at the final hurdle. Then, salvation. A Real corner kick sent the ball flying into the box. A Real player's head connected with it, not Bale's, not Ronaldo's, not Benzema's, but Ramos's. As if guided by God's hand, the ball bounced into the corner of the net. The white side of the stadium erupted. At the very last second, Sergio Ramos had given Real a lifeline. 1-1, the whistle blew, and the game went into extra time. But it wasn't over yet. Atletico's players were shaken, but they could easily bring it back. Ramos had drawn first blood. Now it was up to the front 3 to finish the job. And boy did they. Real's tails were up. Their fans chanted louder and louder. A fantastic run into the box by Di Maria set up a header for Bale, who slotted it in and made Real take the lead in the 110th minute. 2-1. Marcelo followed up with a perfect finish just 8 minutes later. 3-1. Finally, in the very last minute of extra time, Real won a penalty. Who other than Ronaldo himself stepped up to the spot. With a sea of white shirts looking on from behind the goal, and Atletico's keeper the only thing between him and eternal glory, Ronaldo ran up and took his shot. 4-1. The crowd went ballistic. BBC had scored 2 crucial goals in the final of finals, and Ronaldo's penalty made him the very first player ever to score in a Champions League final for 2 different clubs. Real fans taunted their heartbroken rivals, who were pouring out of the ground in despair. The team hoisted the club's 10th European Cup high into the air. La Decima had come. The most interesting part of this final, the BBC played at 50%, all 3 of them, but they wanted to play. Little did anyone know, this was only the start of Real's and most notably BBC's dominance. In most football documentaries, it's at this point we normally call it quits. The heroes have won the ultimate prize. Their decline follows, but everyone remembers them fondly for achieving the impossible. Roll credits, job done. But this is what makes the tale of the BBC trio so special. The legendary La Decima victory wasn't the last chapter of a long, beautiful story. It was the opening paragraph. With Barcelona's golden era at its end, Real Madrid stood poised to return to the top of Spanish football.
It's part of my sacrifice, my obsession to win.
Anyone who knows anything about Cristiano Ronaldo knows how much he cares about winning. Being a European champion once isn't enough. He needs to be the man with the most Champions League wins ever, the most goals scored ever. In other words, he aspires to be the GOAT. This bled into all areas of his life, most notably his teammates, who followed his lead. The BBC needed to be remembered as the best attacking trio in football history. The problem is they faced some stern competition. See, another story was running parallel to Real's at the time, that of MSN. Barcelona's feared front 3, made up of Messi, Suarez and Neymar, burst onto the scene. With Suarez joining the side in 2014, the club felt ready to challenge Real for the prestige of being the world's most lethal attack. Bale, Benzema and Ronaldo would need to work their socks off if they wanted to stay ahead of these 3 demons. A new rivalry had begun. 2014 to 2015 proved to be a mixed bag for BBC. While each of the 3 players achieved personal glory, Real Madrid itself fell a bit short. The season started well. A Ronaldo double gave them the UEFA Super Cup at Sevilla's expense, Real's very first win in the competition. On top of that, Bale's goal sealed a 2-0 win in the Club World Cup. But things unravelled halfway through the season. The club's momentum started to drop, while Barcelona's picked up. Barca went on an insane winning streak in the second half of the season, only dropping points 3 times, 2 draws and 1 loss. This pace gave them the edge, and a Messi goal at Atletico's grounds gave them the league title. An uninspiring defeat to Juventus in the semi-finals of the Champions League and an early exit in the Copa del Rey meant that Real ended the season with just 2 trophies, and not particularly prestigious ones at that. Fans of the club felt disappointed. Fans of the BBC trio, however, were left wowed. They made club history with a record 100 league goals scored across the whole season. No prizes for guessing who contributed to that tally the most. The trio accounted for 61% of all the goals put away. At this point, BBC was the engine powering Real Madrid forward. On an individual level, Bale had the quietest season of the 3. To be expected, given he had the least experience. Still, in 48 matches, he scored 17 goals and racked up 12 assists. Very respectable for sure. Benzema continued to blow people away. In 46 matches, he scored 22 and assisted 15, showing how much he had grown as a player since his first disappointing season at the club. Most notably, he won the 2014 French Player of the Year award for the 3rd time. Only one other player had accomplished such a feat before. Can you guess who? The king himself, of course, Thierry Henry. Illustrious company for Benzema. Ronaldo was the crown jewel of the Real crown that was the BBC, however, and boy did he shine. 48 goals in La Liga and 61 in all competitions, along with 23 assists, made him the European Golden Boot's clear winner for the 4th time, a new record, and the Pichichi's award winner for the 2nd year on the trot. His true moment of glory came in April, when Real first faced Granada in La Liga. He scored a beautiful hat-trick in only 8 minutes, then followed up with 2 more goals to total 5, sealing an unbelievable 9-1 win. In the next game against Real Vallecano, he put away 1 more to score his landmark 300th goal. A mediocre season for Real, a glorious one for BBC. But remember, history remembers trophies, not stats. MSN had both. Messi, Suarez and Neymar outscored their rivals in all competitions and even took home the Copa del Rey, La Liga and Champions League by the end of their campaigns. Being second best is never enough for any Real player, and the BBC trio swore they would have their revenge. The weekend to the season led to the dismissal of Don Carlo from the club. In the 2015 to 2016 season, Rafa Benitez took over in his stead, with the mission of bringing true glory to Real Madrid. The era of dominance the fans craved for would have to start under his watch, or risk never starting at all. Things got off to a solid start. Ronaldo made history by becoming Real's all-time top goal scorer on the 12th of September, putting 5 past the Espanyol goalkeeper. His record? 230 goals in just 203 matches, crushing even the previous holder, the legendary Raul. On top of that, a Bale brace against Betis officially took the BBC total goal tally to 200, solidifying the trio as one of the, if not the, most dangerous front 3 on the planet. In the Champions League, Ronaldo became the all-time top goal scorer thanks to his hat-trick against Shakhtar. From then on, he came to be known as Mr. Champions League. The trio of the BBC were doing great, but the new boss wasn't enjoying his role so much. After suffering a devastating 4-0 loss at home to Barcelona, who didn't even field Messi, falling out of the Copa del Rey because Benitez actually subbed on a player not registered to the tournament, and failing to win against their local rivals, Real sacked their manager only halfway through the season. A certain hard-headed French legend took his place. Zidane was a hero to Real fans, but this was his very first stint as a first-team coach. Can you imagine a more daunting task than managing a world-class Real Madrid team in your very first job, especially considering that Real was set to travel to Camp Nou to face off against Barcelona in just a few games' time? But Zidane was made of unbreakable French iron. As a player, he had seen it all, won it all, and headbutted it all. He kept his ice-cold composure and set up his team to face the club's arch-rivals, with the infamous BBC trio leading the way. Messi, Neymar and Suarez stood before them, the very first time BBC and MSN had ever faced off against each other. The world watched on with bated breath as the Battle of Ages began. Nobody ever won at Camp Nou. This was the mantra Barcelona fans repeated to themselves whenever their team came up against a tough side. It was one of the most daunting away trips in the entire world. A draw might be on the cards, but a loss? Never. Even when Barca took the lead with a header from Piqué, fans felt confident another win was on the table. A goal by Benzema levelled the game. They knew they'd come back. But BBC were born to shatter the norms. In an unbelievable match of pure skill and football heritage, Real pulled back from the brink. A sublime cross from Bale gave Ronaldo just enough space to control the ball, and he slotted it away with pinpoint precision. Su, he gestured to the crowd, an image seared into the minds of millions of Barca fans. The ref blew the whistle, and Zidane's Real broke Barcelona's winning home streak 2-1. The remaining 15 games of the league season went well. Zidane managed to rack up 12 wins and 2 draws, and only lost once. The slow start under Benitez meant that there was still a tiny 1-point gap between Real and Barcelona at the end of the season, but the team felt much more confident than before. Again, the Champions League was where Real thrived, so it came as a huge shock when the Giants lost 2-0 to Wolfsburg away in the first leg of the quarter-final tie. Was Zidane's charm beginning to wear off? They say the easiest way to lose money is to throw it into a pit, but there's an even faster way. Bet against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Back in Madrid, Ronaldo did what Ronaldo does and put away a gorgeous hat-trick to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. After dispatching Manchester City with a clean 1-0 win on aggregate, Real marched on to the final, with the BBC leading the way. Their opponents, who else but their noisy neighbours Atletico. Once again, the two Madrid sides would battle it out to see who would be crowned the kings of Europe. The defeat in the Champions League final a few years back setback was still a fresh wound in the minds of many Atletico fans. The club players had a score to settle and only revenge on their minds. The two teams faced off with BBC leading the line for Real, and the second Battle of Madrid began. The match played out kind of in reverse compared to the last meeting in the Champions League final. This time, Bale caught a free kick into the box with a lovely header and sent it right into Sergio Ramos's foot, who put it away to give Real the lead in the 15th minute. Atletico had learnt their lesson, however, and took a page out of Real's book. They fought hard and brought it back level to 1-1 right before the 80th minute. Rather than capitulate in extra time, Atletico held fast, denying BBC any opportunities to score. The full-time whistle blew at 120 minutes. Would Atletico take home their very first European Cup, or was Zidane on the verge of making it number 11 for Real? Penalties would be the decider. In the Champions League, nothing beats experience. Keeping your cool is vital for penalties, and no time is more ice-cold in front of goal than Real. After Ramos put his away, Juan Fran missed for Atletico, giving Real the edge. Ronaldo stepped up and smashed the ball into the back of the net, making it 5-3 on pens. BBC had achieved the La Undecima, and Atletico felt the sting of defeat yet again. No season better encapsulates the power of BBC than 2015 to 2016. Of Real Madrid's record-shattering 141 goals scored in total across the season, 69% came from the front three. Not only that, but Ronaldo went on to win the Euros with Portugal that year, the very first piece of international silverware his country had ever earned. BBC players were making history not just for Real, but for their countries too. While the stats favour MSN in the league, BBC dominated in the Champions League, where it matters most. 20 goals and 6 assists compared to MSN's 17 and 8. 2015 to 2016 was undoubtedly BBC's year. The next season, 2016 to 17, came along. Despite winning the UEFA Super Cup against Sevilla, some doubts about Real's chances this season started creeping up. First, the team dropped some nasty points by drawing against smaller clubs like Eibar and Las Palmas. Second, Real finished the Champions League group stage in second place, something that just never happened, behind Dortmund. When it rains, it pours. Bale damaged his ankle tendons in November during a 2-1 win over Sporting, taking him out of the starting 11 for over 4 months. It started to doubt if Zidane could recreate that Real Madrid magic without a complete BBC leading the line. But Zidane had learned over the years not to lose his head. December proved to be a great month for the club, despite the early setbacks. Real not only took home the Club World Cup, Zidane's side went 35 games undefeated in all competitions, setting a new record for the club. Ronaldo also won his 4th Ballon d'Or that month, as well as the FIFA Best Men's Player of the Year award for his incredible work with the Portuguese national team. Mid-season rejuvenation made the league leaders Barcelona start to sweat. Dropped a handful of easy points, making the race for La Liga neck and neck. Thanks to a 3-3 draw at Sevilla in January in the Copa del Rey, Real Madrid officially went 40 games unbeaten, beating Barcelona's previous 39-match record. They would sadly be knocked out in the quarter-finals against Celta de Vigo in the Copa del Rey, but the team had made Spanish history all the same. But a massive hurdle was on the horizon. 3 huge fixtures that could make or break Real's season. Bayern in the Champions League quarter-finals, Barcelona in La Liga, and Atletico in the Champions League semi-finals if they beat the German giants. All in the space of a few weeks. It was a massive challenge, made even harder due to Bale's absence for the second game against Bayern. Could Ronaldo and Benzema do it with their Welsh brother in the stands? Unfortunately for his opponents, Ronaldo didn't just survive when the odds weren't in his favour, he thrived. Against Bayern, one of the most potent teams on the planet, he put 2 past Neuer in Munich to give Real a 2-1 lead. The second leg at the Bernabeu started off shakier, as a Lewandowski goal gave Bayern an edge. A 76th minute Ronaldo goal brought Real level, but a Ramos own goal put the Germans ahead again. Extra time began, and Ronaldo kicked things off into 5th gear. He scored 2 goals within 5 minutes, giving him a sublime hat-trick, and 5 goals total over the tie. It ended 4-2, and Real came away with a hard-fought victory. Atletico awaited them in the semis. Next up was Barcelona in the league. Despite being at home, the BBC trio had an unusually poor performance. It ended 3-2 to Barcelona thanks to a Messi brace, with no goals or assists for the front trio. The league campaign was in jeopardy. They could only dust themselves off and focus on the next game. Clearly, Ronaldo had been saving his energy to play Atletico. He unleashed all his pent-up anger at the El Clasico defeat and destroyed the rivals with an unbelievable hat-trick at home. Though they lost 2-1 away, the destruction was enough to get them through to the final on aggregate. Despite the setback in April, Real won the league in May with 93 points for the first time in 4 years, an eon by Real standards. All that was left was the final of finals against Juventus to make it 12. Become the first team to ever win 2 Champions League titles back-to-back. Did they do it? Well, Ronaldo was on the side, so of course they did. Juventus fought valiantly, but a wonder strike from Casemiro, a late finish by Asienso, and 2 wonderful goals from Ronaldo made it 4-1 at the blow of the final whistle. Ronaldo's second had been his 600th goal in his professional career, and gave him the golden boot of the competition over Messi. Bale's absence made MSN win in regards to stats for overall goals, 111 to 70. But the BBC once again took it home in the Champions League with 19 goals to 18. While BBC only contributed 41% of Real's goals that season, the club set a record for the most trophies won in a season. The Super Cup, Club World Cup, La Liga and Champions League titles made it 4 out of a possible 5, only missing the Copa del Rey. By 2018, the trio had done it all. Personal glory, club glory, international glory. Bale and Benzema had made themselves club heroes, while Ronaldo cemented himself as a footballing god, with only his rival Messi as a potential contender. But sadly, all things must come to an end. The BBC trio's days were numbered. Before the season 2017 to 2018, Neymar left Barcelona for PSG. This marks not only the end of MSN, but the end of the incredible 3-year rivalry with BBC. Rumours of a potential Ronaldo departure from the Real camp started to circulate. Real fans accepted with heavy hearts that an era of football history was nearing its final day. This last season would have to count. The league campaign didn't go so well. Injury to Bale left him out for a long stretch. By the end, Real were 17 points behind the champions Barca. In the Copa del Rey, Real were knocked out early by CD Leganes. On the other hand, Zidane's side took home the UEFA Super Cup against Mourinho's Manchester United, the Copa de España against Barcelona, and the FIFA Club World Cup against Gremio. This trophy haul made Zidane the joint most successful Real Madrid manager, alongside the great Miguel Muñoz. Or not, Zidane had racked up as many titles for Real as he had defeats during his time as manager by that point. Basically, Real had left a lot to be desired, so the BBC made it their mission to excel in the Champions League. Together, they decimated the competition. Ronaldo dispatched PSG with a handful of goals across the tie. He destroyed Juventus in the quarterfinals, scoring the famous bicycle kick that had the entire stadium on their feet applauding. The semis were Benzema's time to shine. He put 2 past Neuer, sending Real to the final against Liverpool. Once there, he slotted 1 into the back of the net thanks to an unbelievable Karius error. Lucky for sure, but the BBC were on the verge of making history once again. Then Mane got 1 back for the English side. Things looked grim for Real. What was undoubtedly the last year for the BBC might just end without a major honour. The fans watched on with their hands on their heads. Would Ronaldo's last game for Real end in disappointment? Let's pause and take a moment to recap the journey of the BBC trio up until this point. Ronaldo had obviously dominated the headlines during their era, with his insane goal tally, 44 for the last year in 2018. Benzema had a quieter season with just 12, but the Frenchman played a massive role throughout the BBC era that's often overlooked. He was the man behind the scenes, building up play and creating space with perfect passes so that Ronaldo could score. Without Benzema, the front 3 would never have been so dominant. Then there's Bale. The Welsh star made quite an impact early on in his career. But again, Ronaldo took much of the spotlight. Injuries held him back, and some thought he might have just been a pace merchant, especially compared to his 2 star-studded teammates. Bale wanted nothing more than to make his mark and remind the world he deserved his place in the BBC lineup. And there they all were, level with Liverpool in the Champions League final in Kyiv. ultimate glory on the line. Many looked to Ronaldo in his final appearance for a moment of brilliance. Marcelo sent a ball flying into the box. Ronaldo wasn't there, but Bale was. The Welshman leapt high into the air, kicked out over his head, and delivered what can only be described as a bicycle strike handcrafted by God himself. The ball arched beautifully, lifted by angels, and landed right into the Liverpool net. The Real fans exploded with joy. Bale slid across the pitch, Benzema and Ronaldo rushed to his side and showered him with love. Best of all, only 20 minutes later, Bale took a daring shot way outside the box. It came off Karius's hands and bounced into the goal. 2 goals for Bale, 3-1 to Real. 13 European Cups, eternal glory for the trio. The BBC era didn't go out with a whimper, it ended with a bang. An explosive celebration of the unreal effort each of the 3 players had put in over their years together. The 3 men lifted the Champions League trophy together. That night, they left Kyiv with their arms around each other's shoulders, not as men, but as gods of the beautiful game.